Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Rachel.oneil, and I'm a pre-sales solution engineer here at Valiantys, as well as the ITSM lead for pre-sales. What I'm going to show you today is a webinar on service management that dives a little bit deeper into some features and functionality that we don't usually go over during the actual ITSM basics for JSM. So we're going to talk about service request management with a little bit of asset management thrown in as well. I think asset management is a really important feature that a lot of our clients really need to take advantage of as much as possible, as well as more into incident management and some of the operations features that are available, and some of the new features that have just been released too that are pretty exciting, such as the playbook. And we'll also be taking just a quick look at change management and some of the new features for that as well. One thing to note is this webinar is a departure from our previous webinars, as I'm going to be covering a bit, the content will be a little bit different. And the webinar that I'll be hosting on August 28th will also be almost completely rewritten from this one as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to log them in the chat, and then we'll take care of them at the end of the actual webinar. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. And let's get started. So when it comes to service management, what does that really mean in plain English? So when any of us purchase a service and we have an issue with it, we need to go get some help for it. Whether it's an internal employee or an external user or customer, we want to make sure that we can get service to them fast and efficiently. And one of the ways that we do this is through the portal. So what we're looking at right now on the screen is the Greater Help Desk portal, or help desk. Each of these each help desk that we create has what we call portals. These just happen to be features. And these are the containers where you're going to find the forms for users to request their help. Let's go into one of these. And also, one thing to note is at the very top here, there's a knowledge base section and a knowledge base article section. So if I were to click in this and just type in the word help, I'm going to see a bunch of different articles pop up. And we cover this more in depth in our fundamentals, but I also just wanted to quickly give an overview in case you're not familiar with it. Knowledge base articles are Confluence pages. Anything that we can do in a Confluence page, we can do in a knowledge base article. Knowledge base articles serve several different purposes. One, ticket deflection or self-service. So if you happen to have something that you know your users can do on their own and you don't want them to make a request for it, this is the best way to go about that. Like, let's say a password reset or anything else that really doesn't require intervention from an agent's perspective, then you definitely want to have a knowledge base article to walk them through that so that they can indeed deflect that ticket. Also, knowledge base articles can serve to help walk through a customer through a more complex or complicated request type that has several different fields on it. So it's really going to depend on the kind of thing that you need to get information to your user for. But knowledge base articles are really, really important and should be part of every client's effective service management portfolio. And just very quickly, we can see here, this happens to be one article, but we can have URLs in here, narrative, graphics, tables, macros, really anything that we can do within a Confluence page, we can do here. And JSM also gives you a free Confluence space if you don't happen to be a Confluence customer yet, so that you don't even need to leave the UI and use a different tool to actually create these knowledge base articles, to edit them, delete them, etc. You can also aggregate them. So if let's say I have a human resources project or portal within this, and I have knowledge base articles for that, I can make sure that only HR approved customers or resources are able to see those articles. Now let's go into our service desk. Okay, so at this point now, let's say I know I'm a user, I need to request help for something. I'm going to go to the portal and I'm going to raise a service request. I'm going to get to the portal that I need, and right away I can see there are a couple of additional features here. I can see that there's an announcement here. And if I go back to the Greater Help Desk, I can see that there's an announcement here as well. So this can be handled pretty quickly just by clicking on the Customize button and clicking on Major Announcements. You just have to have admin privileges for it. These announcements can also be great for deflecting additional tickets that have been submitted for an initial problem, like let's say for an incident. If one incident is happening and we know it's happening globally, we already have a couple of tickets or possibly a couple of alerts that are creating these incident tickets, we really want to try to get our customer base or user base to not create more. So putting an announcement on this help desk lets them know, yes, we understand that something is down, X service is down. We are on it. Please don't add any tickets for it yet. We'll give you an update in however many minutes, and something like that. So these announcements, while they certainly look simple, can be really effective at ticket deflection and keeping the count of tickets down. Let's go into our service desk portal here. So now that I've reviewed that initial announcement, now I'm actually in the portal itself just for the IT service desk. And you can rename all of this to say whatever you need it to say. So all of these portals and projects, workspaces, they can all be renamed. All of the descriptive text, all of this can be bespoke to your particular need. But now that I'm in this specific service desk portal, I can see that there's another announcement here. So not only can I see the announcement for the greater help desk, but I can also see a portal specific announcement. So this can show even more information to deflect tickets, to let your user base know that there is now a new request type that they can utilize, or if you want to send them to something else, some other URL, you can do quite a bit of it. You can communicate quite a bit of information just with that one announcement. And then underneath the banner for the actual portal itself, I see one other thing that can give me some more information, and that would be a status page integration. This is a native connector, doesn't cost anything additional. And if you are a user of Statuspage, then you can make sure that this is integrated with your portal. And by clicking on Statuspage, now I'm going to actually get to the status page for the services themselves. And I can see even more information on what might be going on, again, to try to help you deflect some of those tickets. We really want to make sure that our agents are spending their time where it's the most needed. And one of the things we don't want them to be doing is investigating lots of issues, lots of the same issues that are already on the table. So that's just one really interesting feature I wanted to show when it came to service management. And this doesn't necessarily have to be an alert is down or something is alerted, a subsystem is down. It could be a new feature as well. It could be a maintenance period. It could be several different items that you might want to communicate utilizing that status page connector. So let's get into an actual request here. When it comes to the portal, you're going to get a series of groups here. You can have one or more, really just depends on what you're looking for. And you can also have additional related resources listed at the very bottom. So if there might be something that's not quite covered during a knowledge-based session or knowledge-based article, and you want to make sure that it's front and center for your user group, we can add this at the very bottom as well. So they're going to see it when they're on the page and they're looking for their different groups, etc. At this point now, let's talk about different request types and what they look like in these different groups here. These groups are meant to make it easier on the customer to quickly find the request type that they need right away, as opposed to just one long static list of request types. In this case, let's just go to computers. So let's say I know that I want to request a new laptop. Service management is really for, I need something, please give it to me. It can also be used for some types of break fixes, like my laptop might be broken sometimes, and typically those kinds of requests may go into an incident type as opposed to a service request work item type. But it's really going to depend on how your teams are going to respond to that, what really works best for your queues and setup of that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in terms of break fix, you want to keep most of that out of service request unless it's something that's not a true incident. Like let's say there's a Citrix session going on for one of your services and that goes down. That may not necessarily be an incident, and you may want to qualify that as a service request and then have that show up within this group. So it's really, again, going to depend on what's most important for your teams, maintenance and administration of all of these request types and their fields, as well as the queues. But it's really going to depend on who's working on what. But just a little color in terms of what is a service request. Typically, it's I need something, but it could also be something is broken or something is wonky or something is wrong. But typically, those are going to be your incident work item types. Let's go into one of these. We're going to request a new laptop. Okay, once we get into this, we can still see the status update here from the status page, so that these announcements and these status updates go along with whatever request type you're grabbing. And then I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to start adding some information here. So the reason is my current laptop is broken. Or let's say expired. Say it's expired. And then I'm going to add details here, expired. And this is going to tie in with our asset management role that I'm going to show in a little bit. And days ago. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick a model. So one thing to note here is this is an asset management field. And if you're not aware, asset management is a core part of the JSM functionality and allows you to track and maintain any number of different object types. We call them assets, but they're also referred to as objects within the actual functionality. Assets are made of three things: object schemas, which is the matrix of what am I tracking, and then the objects themselves. So in this case, we're going to look at a model of a laptop, not the specific laptop that I may end up owning, but the model that I want to choose to. So these three different models exist in an asset object matrix, or object schema. And then these three models will have a list of attributes. All of the objects in their same schema will have the same attributes. And you can have many, many, many different attributes that say, when was this purchased? What was the cost for this? When is the expiration date? Who owns it? What location it's in? All of those really important pieces of information for each of these objects should absolutely be in those attributes. And in this case, we created an asset custom field that we can let our users choose from their different models that they have access to. So in this case, I'm going to click on the Pro 16-inch. Now you could have additional fields here for additional hardware. You could also create a custom field that has a profile. So if I were to click, and let's say I'm a manager and I'm requesting hardware for somebody new, if it's, let's say, a system engineer, then that system engineer is then going to be assigned these kinds of hardware equipment, mice, monitors, etc. So all of that can be done in one fell swoop, utilizing another custom field that has a profile, which would then tie into automation to then send out all of that hardware once it's approved. So in this case, I'm now going to click on send, and we're going to see the next experience from the user perspective. So now as the user, I was able to find the right portal, I was able to find the right request type, and I've now submitted my request. Now, at this point, we can see that there's some things that are going on here, including there's an approval needed. One of the nice things about JSM is for internal requests, you don't actually have to even go to the portal to approve something. You can do this right from email. But in this case, if I were to be named as the approver for this, and I'm going to make myself that right now, I'll show you how you can do that right in the portal. So from a service management perspective, we're really trying to make it as easy on the user base as possible, not only in finding and submitting our requests, but also for the people who internally need to approve these items as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add myself. And now I've been added to this. And now here in the back end, I can see that there's an approve button, but I'm not a licensed user. So let's say I'm just a manager. I'm never going to see this, but I will see this if I go into this particular item here. So I would be named as a request participant for this particular service request. And now here I can do this in one of two places, either right from my email. I'll get an email saying, hey, there's something you need to approve. I can approve it right from that, or I can come to the portal and approve it here. And to be able to see that, I just click on my face in the top right, and then I can see that I have actually two approvals here. If I open that up, this is going to give me a truncated list of just the service request and or possibly incidents that are asking me for an approval. And in this case, this is where I'm going to be for that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on approve. And at this point also, you can see that the status is now changed. All of these statuses that we're communicating with the end user can be changed to read something completely different. So instead of, let's say we don't want let's say we have 6 different steps between creating a service request and resolving that service request or fulfilling it. And we don't really want our user base to see the different names of those workflow statuses. We can easily update them so it only says in progress or something more generic. So that if you have a customer base that really likes lots and lots and lots of updates, you can have updates put in the comment section automatically utilizing notifications and automation rules, but you don't necessarily have to communicate every single internal work step to resolve that particular request. Also, there's some other additional features here. We can allow our user base to escalate service requests when need be. We can also have them turn notifications on and off. with every request that a user makes, whether internal or external, it's always smart to have at least one notification go out saying, hey, we received your request, we're working on it. And then you can also give them more information as that service request moves through its different workflow statuses to its eventual resolution. Um, Making sure that you have sometimes bespoke notifications is really important as well. And we're going to take a look at what that might look like in just a bit. Also at the bottom here, you're going to be able to see a bunch of different things like comments. If I wanted to make comments, I can communicate back and forth with my agent base. I can also do this through a Teams channel or a Teams chat and Slack as well. So let's say your user base. So this really gives your user base many different options to get help. If they're internal, they've got more options than if they were external, because they obviously they're not going to have access to your Teams channel if they're external. But internally, they can, instead of having to go to a portal, they can just open up the Teams channel and then moving through the Atlassian assistant and the virtual agent, create a request right from that Teams or Slack channel, which is pretty slick. The virtual agent is also pretty slick too. One thing to note, virtual agent conversations are, you get 1,000 per month. After that, you're charged either 5 cents, 4 cents, or 3 cents, depending on the volume of virtual agent conversations that results in a ticket being created per month. So something important to know there too. Okay, so from a user perspective, now I'm done with this. I don't really need to escalate this. I don't want to cancel this request. My notifications are on. I can turn them off if I want to, but most users are going to want to know that something is happening. I know I certainly do whenever I have to post a support ticket to either my internal help desk or even Atlassian too. So it's good to keep your customers notified as much as possible to an extent, depending on the information that you're sharing with them. You can also have reopened as a choice here too. So if you have a service request that they filled out some fields but didn't fill out others, even if they weren't made required, then you can go back and forth and have them add more information to that as well. Typically, it's not industry standard that you would allow most of your customers to go in and change fields, but that is an option if you wanted to. Okay, let's get into the actual service desk piece. Okay, so now we get to our actual backend, or where the agent is going to live, or project administrators. Everything that we show from here on that's not part of the help desk would require a license. So that's also important to know. Approvers, managers, request participants, also known as watchers, none of those folks require a license for this. They can do everything within the portal via Teams or Slack, or within their email as well. When we get into service management, in terms of how an agent is going to approach this, queue management is really important. We go into more into queue management and design in our fundamentals, but it's also important to call out here. As you can see here, we have quite a list of queues here that are for this particular service desk, but we can have distinct queues as well for just service request period, as opposed to everything else. So in this case, we can see that there might be a team priority. So if we have specific kinds of service requests that we really want front and center, then we're going to put that in that team priority space here. Otherwise, if I click on view all queues, it's going to show me all the queues that I have access to. So in this case, I'm just going to click on all. And now we have a really nice filter of everything that has come in based on the kinds of queues that I had set up and how I've set up these particular fields. Also, one thing to note is you can also move these fields around quite a bit, and you can even add many, many more. So every custom field within JSM can be part of a filter and can be reported on, basically, anywhere you need to. Let's go back to our service requests. And let's go into the new laptop request itself. So from a service management perspective, once we know that we've set up our queues, that now it's time for agents to start working these through to their completion. And we really want to rely heavily on automation as much as possible to move these different service requests, because a typical service request is going to be, I need something. And if it, let's say it's access to an application or a piece of hardware, there's usually going to be an approval step in there. So making sure that you have the approval set up automatically already is very important, so that you don't have to look up who a requester's boss might be, or supervisor or approver. If they're, let's say, just another team member or somebody more senior, you really want to make sure that you set up the automation rule within the workflow itself, so that those people are notified right away, so that there is no time gap between when a service request is created and the actual approver is assigned to it and then notified that there is an approver. Speed really relates back to efficiency, which usually relates back to happier customers, both internal and external. So as much automation as we can set up as possible is going to be really important to make sure that you're hitting your SLAs and your SLA panel here, which we also talk a little bit more in the fundamentals course as well. SLAs are going to be really important for your reporting, for your agents, so that they know how much time they have moving through their different request types. And in this case, we can see that the time to first response is going to be 4 hours. The time to resolution is going to be 8 hours for this particular request type. And then the time to approval should be within 1 hour. We can already see that that has been completed. So we're good on these SLAs for now. We're not running late. Nothing is screaming red at us. So that's great. Also, something that we need to make sure that we configure specifically for each individual kind of request so that we can get really good reporting on how quickly our agent is working through these resolutions, how quickly our agent is moving these tickets through its different workflow statuses. But to aid them, again, making sure that automation is part and parcel of every piece of service request that you create and request type that you create is going to be crucial for this. One other thing to note in terms of some new features that have been released is the similar work items. So I can see that, for example, if there are similar work items that have multiple laptop requests, maybe there's a user who created more than one. This is going to show up here. We can also have automation do a sweep for things like that, looking for duplicate tasks. But this is going to tell me if how many new laptop requests there have been. Maybe you have somebody in procurement that also has a license for this who is working within JSM as part of the asset management piece. They can go in here and just see how many laptops have been requested. We can also run reports on that and have that data sent out to procurement so that they can do additional actions like order more stock per se. That's just one of many examples for asset management. When it comes to service management on the back end here, this is really what you're going to see. You're going to see the context with all the different fields in this. This happens to be the asset management field that I mentioned before. Let's take a quick look at this. When I click on that little squiggly graphic piece, I can see how this particular model relates to everything else that has an inbound or an outbound reference to it. So in this case, we can see that this particular model has an outbound reference to its manufacturer, which would be Apple. And then we can see other inbound references, meaning a reference from another object into this particular object. And these are all the actual individual models that are owned by that have this particular laptop model attached to it. So when I click on these individual objects here, this being one object and all of these being separate objects, I can see that the attributes change here. So if I click on the MacBook Pro, I can see that there's a set of attributes such as the name, when it was created, when it was last updated in the system, the vendor or manufacturer, the screen size, CPU, etc. Also, I can put in expiration dates here and many, many other pieces of information that may be required for reporting and managing assets in general later on. And then if I click on the other objects, I can see that the attributes change. So I can see things like warranty expiration date, a purchase date, the cost, etc. Again, all of these are reportable, and all of these can be utilized within automation rules to help look for expired stock, order more stock, many, many other kinds of asset management features. And let's take a look at what that is right now. So within this asset management piece, we've built out a set of automation rules, and we're just going to show one example of them before we run into our incident management piece. But this is an example of a task that was raised via automation. So for this, no one had to do anything. All we did was build this automation rule that looks up objects from the object schema. We'll take a look at that in a moment. It's going to look for things like, okay, I want to look for the laptop model in the object schema. And then I want to create a new task, and I want it to tell me if something has expired. This is going to give me a list of everything that's coming up that has expired or is about to expire. Why would we need such a rule? Well, if I have this information, if I have now this ticket that has been created and I've been notified that this ticket is created, I can then either notify procurement, or let's say I am the person in procurement. Maybe I don't want a license, but I do want to know that there are a bunch of these things that are going to expire. A couple of things can happen. Number one, I can check this against my stock list and order more. We can also, from a holistic perspective, if we don't even want to involve procurement, this is what we would do. This task gets created, and then another task gets created for approval of purchase of more and additional laptops to increase our stock. Also, for these individual expirations, what we can do is for each of the users that has an expiring laptop coming up, we set up the following: create an automation rule that does the following: creates a new service request that will notify the current user of that laptop that, hey, your laptop's expiring, but we're going to send you a new one. So now that user is informed, and even that you can have, if you have enough stock, then you can say this new laptop will be sent out between X day and X day. You can also give them instructions on how to send their old laptop back once they receive the new one. Again, removing as much of the manual work required, typically required from an agent population, is what we're really trying to go for here. So you send a notification out letting them know your laptop expiring, and instructions for return of that laptop will be included. And then at the same time, in the same automation rule, you can create another service request that will take that particular laptop, send notifications to whoever sends that out, and then they can manually send that laptop out to the person who needs to go to. All of that can be done with one automation rule and two service request tickets, possibly just one as well. You could have all of that within just that one service request ticket itself, which is a really nice way to cut out as much manual effort as possible. And I wanted to show what assets looks like really quick, because I don't know if we've really covered that in depth. So I mentioned previously that assets have object schemas, objects, and attributes for each of these objects. But one other little piece here, we're not going to show it today, but there's also something called Data Manager. This is now an open beta status, so you can utilize this if you wanted to utilize this in JSM. Data Manager can import information from several different sources and use them for asset management. This is a really interesting new feature, and we're going to try to demo that in the August 28th webinar. But for now, let's take a look at the different object schemas here. So these seem pretty, for most people, for most clients who are tracking objects, you're going to have a mix of probably several of these, including IT employee assets for endpoints, asset testing, applications, physical assets, even services. Services are going to come into play for incidents and change management as well with our affected services field. But in this case, let's check out IT employee assets. Also, one thing to note, people can be used as assets as well. And we can grab people from several different areas, whether it's Active Directory or Okta, into the object schema and continually update those people as assets so that they can be related to all of these different endpoints here. So for example, let's take a look at the monitor. So these are actual live monitors that are currently owned by folks. And this is the list of laptops that are currently owned by folks as well. So for this particular laptop, we can see that there is a number of attributes, and we can see that there are inbound and outbound references. In this case, there is just an outbound reference. For the actual supported hardware model schema area, we're going to click on the supported laptop, and we're going to see four different laptop models. Now, we were only able to choose from 3, I believe, in our previous service request, and we can do that based on users as well. So maybe we don't want all of our users to have access to all of our models, depending on what customer group they may be in. There is some automation and some ways that we can make sure that they only have access to certain values. Within these different attributes, we can see different information such as storage, RAM, CPU, what the status is, if it's in use, if it's been expired or expunged, and etc. So this can give us a lot of information on just the actual model itself. There are other automation rules that we can use for this, such as I want to see if a certain model has had specific problems more so than others. And there's an automation rule that we're going to cover in the next demo that shows, okay, we've seen that there are 2, actually, I think we're going to see that right now. We're going to see that in the broken laptop in just a second. So I'll pause there. When it comes to the object schemas, it's really important to set the right foundation first. So you're typically going to want to have the higher level schema for the models of things that are supported, especially for endpoints, and possibly services for application access. And then for, like, let's say licensing, as opposed to laptops, maybe endpoints as in terms of the hardware isn't as important as licenses for software access. That can also be listed. So instead of laptops, you would have license keys, basically, for each of the different applications that you're tracking access to. Okay, let's take a look at the broken laptop. Okay, so in this case, what this is going to do is exactly what I just said. It's going to look for, in this case, it's going to be every 30 days, but you can have it recycle itself every day. And this is going to tell us when something is damaged, and when it's comparing the two, it's going to compare these two values, and it's going to say, hey, several tickets have been submitted in the last month for this model name. So if we see that we have 10 models and one model is giving our user base more problems than others, that's going to be a cause for concern, and also something we might want to deprecate in terms of users even being able to use it at all. So this is asset management. Having your assets within JSM is great, but if you're not using automation to really make that work, to get information about these different pieces, different endpoints and these different items, you're really missing out on some management there that typically you'd have to do just by scanning them manually. So this is just one example. You could have many, many different automation rules for asset management in general, for object access management as well. So software pieces, accesses to geographical locations. Maybe somebody needs a new card key or a new pass key, or a new VPN. All of those could be listed as asset objects, and then automation can reduce or completely remove most of the manual work to track, monitor, maintain, and fulfill. Okay. Okay. That takes us through our service management piece for today. Again, August 28th, we'll have some interesting new use cases that we'll be sure to showcase. But for now, let's take a look at incident management. And if we have time, we'll take a look a little bit at change management at the end. So IT incident management is very much for the serious break fixes. In this case, we're really going to talk more about services as opposed to endpoints. But in this case, we're talking about systems are down, like payroll systems are down, billing systems are down. And there are a lot of ways to ingest those kinds of incidents. One, an end user such as myself or an external end user or customer can go to the portal and create an incident, right? So they're going to go to the service desk or operations, however you have it named, and they're going to report a system problem of some kind. So if we're reporting a system problem here, we're just going to, again, as the user, we're going to click on that particular request type, and then we're going to fill it out. So I'm going to say payroll is down, because we're picking on payroll today. And then the user is going to add their details. They're going to click on their affected service. So I mentioned previously that affected services, we're going to talk about that in incidents and change. Affected services is also an asset management field. So all of these services currently live in their own object schema, and they're going to have their own set of inbound and outbound references as well. We're going to want to make sure that the affected services field is tied within all of our incidents and most of our changes, unless it's a brand new request for something. But typically, it's going to track back to a system, or a piece of a system. So we're going to want to make sure that we have this field in with most of our incident and change management requests. So in this case, let's just say payroll. And now I'm going to say, how urgently does this need to be fixed? I'm going to say critical. All of these fields can track back to, again, additional automation in terms of, let's say we're considering a critical as a P1 as opposed to a P3, which can then kick off a whole set of actions and issues within Jira Service Management. It's also important to ask about the impact. Now, whether or not the impact actually is significant or large may remain to be seen, and will probably be triaged by that agent group. But it's important to know what a customer thinks, whether internal or external, is of this particular incident. And then I'm going to click on a system location. In this case, let's click on East. And you can have multiple values in all of these fields as well. And then I'll click on Send. Okay. And at this point, again, we're going to see the same thing as we did last time. Our statuses, if I want to turn my notifications on or off, which kind of request type I just filled out, and then the context of what I actually just reported is going on. So let's get into the back end here and take a look at what that looks like. Take a look at some of the operations features with this as well. If you aren't aware, Atlassian has a product called has a product called Opsgenie. Opsgenie is Atlassian's answer to alerting. for systems, pieces of systems, applications, really anything that you can connect to can be reported on as an alert or something going on. So in this case, and so for Opsgenie, they're sunsetting that. So they have baked in all of the operations features from Opsgenie into JSM, which is a fantastic value add for managing your incidents. Also can be tied into change management as well. And we're going to take a look at a few of those features in just a moment. In this case, again, we're going to see pretty much the same thing at the very top here. We're going to see an affected services feature here. If I click on this little squiggly here, we're going to see additional inbound and outbound references. Actually, in this case, it's not linked to anything, but other inbound and outbound references would show up for most other services. One other feature to note here is if there are additional open incidences for this particular affected service or payroll, I'm going to click on this little triangle here, and it's going to show me that there are some other incidents that are going on. Typically, those are already going to be in flux with the responder teams, but it's good for an agent to know if a pile of incidents happened with this particular service, and let's say for some reason it hasn't been alerted on yet, that's another thing to do with your responder teams to let them know, hey, there's something going on. Let's get it fixed. Moving down, let's talk about a couple of other pieces here too. So there is also an ops guide. We're gonna talk about the ops guide more in depth in our August 28th webinar, but let's just click on this really quick. So what this is Rovo here. This is where Rovo comes in. This is going to help me resolve incidents. I can create a post-incident review right from here. And then I can also see additionally if there are any ongoing incidents and dive deeper into that detail utilizing Rovo with this ops guide. You can also create agents within Rovo to get you more information on how to resolve this, get you more information on the history of these kinds of incidents with affected services or any other field that happens to be part of this particular incident request type. So that's something we'll talk about more in our next webinar. One thing to talk about here too is the changes on affected services and asset objects feature that has been recently released. So if I click on this, I'm going to see for the last 3 months, 6 months, and even older than that, any changes that happen to be related to this particular affected service. Because if there are, let's say, current changes going on, I want to know that because we're probably going to want to stop that change because there's currently an incident. Or maybe that incident was created because of the change that's happening and something went awry. So it's important to know how everything relates to itself. And Atlassian has done a really nice job of adding additional panels to let your agent population know that something else may be affected so that they can get some downstream effects on that and possibly head that off at the pass. There are things that have been recently released are related resources. So this uses Atlassian intelligence to find additional information about this particular affected service and just this particular incident in general too. So we can see that if let's say an agent is confused or wants more information on something that might have happened recently, they can click on these links and get more information on something that's related to this particular service, just to give them a better contextual picture of what's going on with that. And then playbooks. Let's take a look at playbooks. Playbooks is a really new feature that is really, really interesting. So I mentioned knowledge base articles early on, and knowledge base articles are great not only for your user base, but also for your agent base too. This really takes it a step further. So in this case, what a playbook is a playbook gives you instructional steps right in the actual incident ticket itself on how to resolve this, as opposed to having to go into the knowledge base area and actually find the article that's important for them, and then hopefully that will help them. What if that's not completely updated? What if there are new steps that really haven't been taken care of, or there just isn't enough time to update all of these particular knowledge base articles? Highly recommend utilizing the playbook feature. So let's talk about this. So in terms of the playbook steps, you can have two choices. You can have an instructional step and an automation step. You can have multiple of each of these. But in this case, for the step one, let's say add a step description here. So for this particular service, you could say for this service, we want to make sure X is contacted. And usually through automation, a team is going to be assigned to that particular affected service or an object. So they will absolutely be contacted right away. But it's important to know who is being contacted. And for the agent themselves, they might not know who's going to be contacted or who they need to be in contact with to talk about how is this going or the different information and steps that they're doing to resolve that. This can be informational for the agent, or it can give you automation steps. So when it comes to automation steps that you can choose, you're basically choosing automation rules that have already been created and then adding them into the playbook themselves. So if you want to give your agents power to use those automation rules to move through different steps for resolution for these incidents, this is what a playbook would be for, as opposed to a static knowledge base article that may or may not have been updated within the last 6 months. Playbooks are specific to the type of work item and can also be drilled down a little bit more into other components for that particular incident. But playbooks are really, really interesting and effective new feature released by Atlassian not too long ago. So this can also help your responder teams, assuming that they have access to everything. We can also, some additional features that can go hand in hand with these playbooks are setting up Teams channels and Slack channels right away to swarm an incident for one or more teams who happen to be working on it. One of the things to mention here in terms of the functionality just within the incident task itself is this major incident button here. So for all incidents and all teams that are part of the operations area, which we'll take a look at in a moment, there are escalation and routing rules. So a typical escalation is the first 5 minutes, we're going to notify everybody on call that there's an incident that we need to manage. The second 5 minutes after that, we're going to notify other people on the team who don't happen to be on call. And then after 10 minutes, we're going to notify absolutely everybody if no action has been taken. But in this case, if it happens to be a major service or something that's critical for business use, depending on the tier of service that we're naming it, then we're going to make sure that either automatically or manually, the major incident button is toggled. So at this point, what happens is instead of waiting several different intervals for folks to be notified, instead, this will be escalated to a major incident team. You can name that whatever you like. And once it's escalated to them, then everybody gets notified right away instead of waiting for something to happen. And then you can rinse and repeat all of those escalations as well in case someone doesn't actually acknowledge it. But this really helps your seasoned teams and the teams that are responsible for the business critical applications to jump on this right away with no waiting time in between. Let's talk about automation and how that goes hand in hand with incidents, because what we looked at is an incident that I created utilizing just the actual help desk portal itself. But for the most part, you may not need someone to notify you of an incident if you happen to be using alerting. Let's talk about alert. So alerting is part of the operations piece that is now baked into JSM directly. This is for premium and enterprise customers. Just wanted to let everyone know that too. So within operations, there are a couple of pieces here. There's an overview, which is going to give you just that, an overview of everything that you're looking for. And I do want to show that, but I don't want to lose my alert. Let's go ahead to alerts. So the overview itself is going to give you the response teams for this and allow you to view all teams or enable operations. So we can see that each of these teams are going to have a number of users here. And if I happen to click on any one of these teams, in this case, the webinar demo team, we're going to see a series of options here. Really highly recommend that you utilize as many of these operations features as possible. This also is a really good alternative to some of the other pricier alerting softwares out there. This does the exact same job, but in my opinion, better because it has a seamless connection to the actual incidents that it can create automatically. So let's talk about that. So this is where your overview is going to be. So I'm going to be able to see my routing rules for this particular operations team, the escalation policies that I'd mentioned previously, and all the schedules as well. And one thing to note is I can do overrides right from here and take an on-call schedule if I happen to be an agent. I can also do this using my mobile app as well. So because sometimes responder teams may not be in front of a computer, they can do most of this on their mobile app as well, which is a really nice feature to be able to take a look at what an alert actually looks like. So this alert is going to look similar to the incidents, change requests, and service requests that are available here. This, we can see that we created something because this alert came in. because this is a P1 critical system, and in this case, again, we're picking on payroll, there may be additional details here, but really we just need to know that it's down. Assuming that it is a P1 system, we're going to have an incident created right away for that. No waiting. We're just going to go ahead and create that instead of triaging it manually, which is what a lot of agent populations do for, I would say, about 50 to 60% of the alerts that come in that are not P1. We want to make sure that those agents can take a look at them, make sure it's a real alert, make sure that it's not something that will resolve itself, in just a couple of minutes, and then create an incident from that. So instead of making them manually create an incident, we create an automation rule that creates one automatically. And this is what that happens to look like. Pretty simple. We can also have branches off of this, so we can check things, have an automation rule check actual components within the alert before it creates that incident. But in this case, this is just a simple automation rule that creates an incident. And we can see that the incident is created because it is now linked into that initial alert ticket. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So the alert comes in via an integration, which are very easy to set up. And the operations process actually takes you through all the steps required to set up that integration to receive alerts. And then once we receive that alert, we know that it's XYZ in terms of components and criticality and priority, then it's going to create this incident. So this was created automatically, and we can see that by going down to the actual history. And it's going to show us right here that this was created immediately because it is a P1. And then we can also see refreshed automation rules in the bottom here in the configuration panel. So we can see that when this alert is created, create an incident automatically. Again, trying to reduce as much manual time spent by your agent population as possible. And the same thing here, you can have, again, more playbooks with additional pieces in it. And you can have multiple playbooks as well. So not just one, but you can create as many playbooks as you like. I think the limit is 150, but I'll have to check. So again, making sure that you're setting up your alerting so that you can immediately trigger incidents is going to be really important to reducing that manual spend and to getting responders to take a look at incidents right away, as opposed to waiting for manual triage with those alerts as well. Again, we're trying to get faster time to market and faster and as quickly as we can. We want to resolve these critical incidents, and this is one of the ways that we can do that. And very quickly, I just want to show how an alert is configured. I'm going to go into my alerts, click on all. Actually, sorry, let me go down here. There we go. Still getting used to the new UI. So when I go into my admin settings for operations, then I can see a bunch of different things, including integrations. And we're going to talk about heartbeats really quick, and then I want to talk about changes really, really quick. So in terms of integrations, I'm going to click on alert logic here. And I'm going to see that there's a box here that says steps to configure the integration. So this really is meant to make it as easy on your administrators as possible to set up your initial bay of alerts so that you can now start ingesting critical information so that you can resolve things as fast as possible. Also, one thing I wanted to mention here are heartbeats. So within the operations piece, there's a really interesting service called Heartbeat. A heartbeat is used as a ping for a service to let you know that it continues to work and that there's nothing going on there. Why would we want to do that? Well, why would we want to set up heartbeats? We want to set up heartbeats because we want to be as proactive as possible with the tools that we're using. And in some cases, and sometimes many cases, there might be a hiccup before a full-blown issue or a full-blown thing is down. So receiving a ping either by minute or hourly will help you to know that everything is going fine, there's no problems. But let's say you miss a heartbeat or two. You can then immediately swarm on that and go straight to the service or the service owner and say, we didn't get a ping here, is everything all good? Then they can possibly run some automatic checks and maybe head something off before it even happens. So that's really the goal for service management, especially going forward with Atlassian, is how can we be more proactive as opposed to reactive? Also, heavily encourage you to check out all of our Rovo videos because you can create agents to do additional proactive activities when it comes to incident management as well. So I just wanted to show what a heartbeat looks like here. Again, it's very easy to set up. You just need a couple of different areas to put in terms of the API documentation and a token, and then you're kind of off and running. And I wanted to show this really quick. So from the heartbeat perspective, I've got a list here, and I can see when it was last pinged, when the next ping is, and then get alerted when I miss a ping, so that I can do a little bit of information up on that just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And again, that we can be as proactive as we can. And very quickly, the last piece for incident management, it's really important to know what happened when it comes to an incident. So we want to have a post-incident example here. So this is a post-incident review. And I just wanted to show really quickly the incident summary here. So if I'm new to the team or I'm reviewing all incidents in the last 10 days or so, I want to know what happened right away without having to dig into all the actual incident tickets and all of those comments. So I can either manually or have a PIR created automatically based on, again, severity, the service, affected service, whatever that might be. And then I can go into my PIR and actually see this really nice incident summary. So this is going to give me some really important information right away. And then I can take this information and then do whatever I need to do with it. Maybe I need to schedule a review of this service or a review of the code that's working for this service, because there have been several different incidents. Lots of information, lots of activities can take place just by focusing on the PIR alone. And that takes us to the end of our incident management for today. Okay, let's quickly talk about change management, and then we'll hopefully have a couple minutes for questions. Very quickly, change management can be created, change requests can be created within the portal itself, or it can also be created by agents as well. We can also have changes created automatically based on issues that are in our Jira software project. So let's say we're releasing a new feature. We don't even have to come to the portal at all. We can have an automation rule pick up that, hey, there's a new incident, there's a new Jira software ticket for this service, and we are releasing something to it. All of that can be done manually and if you automatically. And if you'd like to see how that process works, definitely check out our previous webinar from last month. That'll have a segment in it at the very end. So when it comes to change management, again, when it's a user reported change, typically it might be an upgrade or decommissioning of a server, whatever that change might be. We want to make this, we want to get as much information from them as possible. And I'm not going to submit a change through this time. I want to show the actual form. So there's a form feature for our request types for changes that I really recommend that you use to really get as granular as you can, depending on the kind of change that we're talking about. So for an example, I'm going to click on normal here. Actually, I'm going to click on emergency. So when I click on it for these particular fields here, depending on who or what I click on, a set of fields is going to show up here. So for emergency, we can see boxes like what is the proposed change, the urgency, amount of downtime, etc. If I change this, then I get additional pieces. Like I get a nice info box here saying, hey, this is going to require CAB approval. And additional boxes can show up. These can have different values, can say different description pieces, description help pieces. So many different fields can show up. So we'll take a look at what a form can do more in the next webinar as well. But I just wanted to quickly show that this is an important piece of your request types for changes. And also your agents can utilize forms as well if they're creating a change right from the JSM UI itself. Also, for changes in terms of the forms and adding a form, this is where you're going to do it. So you're going to be in your project settings here, and you're going to go down to your request management area. Once you're in this actual request type for changes, then you're going to be able to click on a form, or you can also trash it as well. So in this case, let's say I'm going to get rid of it. And then it's going to say, okay, do you want to add another one? So then I can re-add it, or I can also create one from a template right from here. So very light on the change management piece today. I just wanted to focus a little bit on the forms and that it is an available feature out of the box, which at no extra cost to get even more information from your user population for your different change requests. And that's all we had for today. And just very quickly, in terms of the change, this is what it looks like on the back end when you are actually creating it. And this brings us to the end of our demo. And I think it's time for some questions. Okay, see in the chat here. Q&A. It looks like there's one question here. Thank you, Carl. Doesn't look like there's any questions. Any other questions? We got about 3 minutes here. Just give everybody a minute. Is there anything that you'd like to see in the next webinar that I didn't cover today? Happy to take suggestions all the time. More details on asset management? You got it. Happy to do that. And that will be part of our August 28th webinar as well. We'll show the actual flow of what it looks like, and then I'll show an example of an email that you get as well. Because asset management is a really important piece of service request management, and that's really where it all started for JSM too. Incident management and change management really came later, but service request management is at the core of all service management. It's right there in the words, right? So it typically gets glossed over, but it's, to me, one of the most important pieces, because when I think of incident management, I really think of the operations function of that as opposed to true service request management. So we'll definitely cover assets more in August for sure. If there are no other questions, I think we can end for today. As always, thank you so much for your attendance. And if you have any questions or follow-up questions, we'd love to talk to you and have a conversation about how we can help you.